Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching SA Today with me, Unati Pagyashe. Well, let's continue here. Expectations are rife that lockdown restrictions could possibly be eased. Earlier this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa held consultations with representatives of political parties and the religious sector on the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we're joined via Zoom by Wendy Alberts, the CEO of Restaurant Association of South Africa. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, Wendy, following the President's consultations, are you expecting restrictions to be eased at all?
We've certainly over the last 6 weeks motivated every level of evidence that we should be reopening the industry and lifting restrictions. We're moving into the summertime months. The public is certainly demanding that they want to go out, and we need to accommodate people in a safe environment. We need to up the numbers, and we certainly need to lift the curfew and bring back the dinner time trade. It's been dire for us without the dinner time trade. It is 70% of our turnover, and we're only currently trading at 25% of potential with an expectation of 100% to pay our debts. And there simply isn't the margins or the turnover or the cash flow to support the debts. And we are drowning in admin. We are drowning in letters of demand. We are drowning in foreclosures of services being cut, fibers being cut, different aspects of supplier lines being cut. Our landlords are tricky. And the banks certainly are not playing the part in helping us to maneuver through it. You know, there isn't an understanding that our businesses have actually been put on restricted trading times, which doesn't allow us the ability to bring in the cash flow to be able to pay our debt. So we certainly are hoping that the letters that we've written and the consultations that we've made in the private sector have been well heard through the lines that we've channeled it through. As you well know, government has certainly been very disappointing as they've closed down all lines of communication with the restaurant industry. And we haven't been able to have discussions on finding compensation or finding any type of reprieve or debt deferment over the last couple of months.
Wendy, just talking about the model of the restaurant industry, I want to figure out from you, so it cannot basically be sustainable should it not go back to how things were before COVID-19. Is that what you're saying? Because the reason I ask this is we're watching this fourth wave that we're being told is coming by December. We're also being told that it's taking the country longer to get out of the third phase. While the expectation is that we will ease lockdown restrictions, I'm wondering what would happen should we see this fourth wave become a reality and again the nation be put under a stricter kind of lockdown. What would happen for the industry?
And Yati, as we speak, the industry is decimated. We are broke. Our restaurants are closing by the minute. We've been down this line for 18 months, and the model that restaurants were built on 18 months ago is not the model that government has expected us to reform ourselves to. So what we've done for the last 18 months is we become purely takeaway businesses or delivery businesses, or we become drive-thrus, or we become roadhouses, or we become bottle stores, or we become coffee shops. And our business is a very sensitive business financially. So we require a combination of alcohol and food sales done at a certain amount of GP with a certain amount of seat turnover in a capacity to be able to afford our rent and to be able to afford our other obligations that we've got. And what government now has done is restricted the potential to bring in people into our business, which means we don't get the turnover or the seat turnover or the capabilities of the alcohol to food split, which doesn't enable us to meet our financial obligations. And I think 18 months of us constantly being on bended knee to the different type of suppliers, banks, landlords, asking to assist us, they've got exhausted from doing it. And what is happening is that we're just drowning in the debt. And we are broke. There's no more resources. We cannot put ourselves into any further debt. And this is a large portion of which has lent itself. What we also need to remember is that many restaurants have 5-year leases. And many of those restaurants had only entered into those leases at the beginning of lockdown or had renewed their leases at the time. So it's been very difficult to remodel those leases or to change the obligations and terms of that contractual law. So whilst we've been encouraging our restaurants to look at greater outside seating spaces and become more innovative, there hasn't been a lending from government side to be inclusive of any type of innovation or to have bigger outside areas or to look at aspects to make it safer in our establishments. And the other thing which we've also asked for is to give us this critical scientific evidence that we are potentially a high-risk area. The rest of the world shows that we're a low-risk area. And the other aspect that we've also asked for is that if lockdown was put to prepare the healthcare system by increasing the number of beds, why has that exercise not happen, because that shouldn't have had an impact on the economy, which has pushed itself to ourselves. And we've had absolutely no compensation. We've not had any possibility of having type of debt reprieve or debt deferment. And hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs. We've worked so hard over the last couple of years to create employment, to get a standard of employment, to bring skills into the industry, to uplift the morale of the people that work in our industry, to watch it being depleted in the last 18 months. So we are very, very stressed about our industry. We're very stressed about the future of us trading through the difficult times. And we are hoping that the recent announcements, or the new announcements, will certainly bring reprieve for the industry, that we'll be able to trade through and try and save as many restaurants as we possibly can. But if there isn't an ease of lockdown, we're going to see a decimation of the restaurant industry. Far too late for many restaurants that have unfortunately had to close their doors.
And I'm sure, just speaking about the vaccination, that there's really no room for, comfort in the industry as it pertains to, encouraging people to vaccinate. I mean, you were talking earlier that people are dying out to go out. And as I was driving to work, I saw quite busy streets. Restaurants are packed and they're full. As an industry, though, and as it relates to vaccinating, what are you doing to encourage your patrons specifically to go out there and vaccinate? Are we seeing countries outside of our borders, as an example, in the restaurant industry, where restaurants are saying if you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed to come into this establishment? But what is this industry in this country doing?
It's a broad-scale conversation that we certainly been calling to government to have with our industry. We need to have these functional conversations on how we can best meet the expectations of the industry and how we can certainly bring this to a forefront. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks is that restaurants certainly have encouraged, through free will, to get as many of their staff vaccinated and many restaurant owners and management vaccinated. We're certainly not going to do the job of government, and we're certainly not going to use the pandemic to create policy to create a expectation that lends itself to any type of discrimination within the industry. We are here to work with government. We are here to systematically keep our patrons and our staff safe. We are here to ensure that as many people free willingly go and have the vaccinations, and we're open to government sitting down and having conversations with us. And until government can actually work hand in hand with us, we need to go back to the beginning conversations of finding solutions for, one, compensation on how we actually keep the restaurants open, two, how we bring reprieve, and three, how we bring debt deferment, how we bring people back to work in the industry, and causing further discrimination by not allowing patrons to come into our restaurants is just putting the industry further into decimation.
Wendy, how is I was chatting to the liquor industry just before this interview. How is your relationship with government at the moment? And I'm hearing all of the constraints that you're finding yourself in. And the reason I ask that is that our economy is really not doing very well. And some of the owners in the restaurant industry are also young black entrepreneurs, Is there almost like a disconnect between who are actually the restaurant owners and this behavior or relationship or lack thereof between yourselves and government?
The restaurant industry is quite a fragmented business. We are housed across various ministerial divisions. Our labor sits within the labor minister. We've got our liquor license that sits in a different ministerial division. We are formally housed within the tourism division. And then obviously we've been calling on small business, and we've been calling on various other divisionals to get relief and reprieve in certain parts. Like when we had the National Bargaining Council that was put out with our proper consultation and processing of the industry, we went to that direct ministerial division. And so what we are doing is we constantly find that we're almost doing the job of the Minister of Tourism. And that is not what we're here to do. Before the cabinet shuffle, we had increasingly good relationships with all the various ministerial nodes where we were able to engage. And, Minister Mamaloka was an exceptionally good advocate for the industry and the sector. And she took the time to understand how imperative the combination of liquor sales to food sales was, the timing, the extended lockdown to get the extensions on our permits for our staff to travel after cleaning. And there was definitely an integrated, sincere interest in our industry. Since the shuffling of the cabinet, we've got absolutely no advocacy for the industry, and nobody understanding, and nobody stopping and going, this industry is critical at this point in time. South Africa stands to lose its restaurant industry. We've already lost iconic restaurants all around South Africa in the tourism belts. We are a vast contribution to tourism, to local tourism and international tourism. And we need to preserve the integrity of the industry, and that's not happening. And nobody is stopping and actually looking at the amount of numbers that are closing and the restaurants that are closing, the jobs that are being lost. It is almost that we have just been forgotten in this last process. And we will continue to advocate, we will continue to call, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can get reprieve to be able to bring people back to work. At least 70% of our base is still unemployed. And this is putting further pressure on the economic position of the country, as you well know. And we also are one of the largest contributors in tax money. So we need to get our businesses open, and we need to work with government that keeps both our staff and patrons safe, and that also has the least amount of economical impact on our businesses.
Wendy, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We really do appreciate it. Wendy Alberts, the CEO of the Restaurant Association of South Africa.